So, everybody, welcome to the Power of the Pivot, where we talk all things pivot because change is the only constant in life. I help women thrive through transition to help them pivot with skills, community, and resources. And my first interview today, I'm so excited about. Welcome, 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 Sin. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Can you introduce yourself? Tell us about you, what you got going on, all the good things.
So, my name is Cynthia Melendez. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I currently have a private practice that I've had now for close to 4 years. Most of the time, I'm just seeing clients individually, one to one. As of recent, I've started expanding Intuitive Healing Counseling LLC to kind of start doing some speaking engagements and kind of reaching more people so that it doesn't have to be just this kind of one to one interaction. And also, I'm an aspiring voice actress, so I'm also doing some voiceover things here and there. So that's kind of a bit about me in a nutshell.
Yes, thank you. So she is a speaker, y'all, and she is a voice actor, y'all. I love it. So the reason I wanted to start having these conversations is because a lot of women get to a place in life where they're kind of at this crossroads. I call it like the awakening moment where they take a look in the mirror and they're like, I can't do this shit anymore. Whatever this shit is, it could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be a career path, it could be anything. But people wake up and they decide that they would like to do something else and are not really sure about what the next step should be, about how it should look. So I wanted to start to interview people who have gone successfully through pivots to talk about some of the things that worked, some of the things that didn't, because we're going to be talking about failure here too. Because failure is a part of the pivot, right? It's inevitable when you're trying something new. So we'll be talking about the good, bad, and the ugly about pivots and just how we got through them so we can hopefully motivate and inspire some other women to make the shifts they need to make in their lives. And I realized I didn't introduce myself. My name is Jalon Agnew. I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. I'm an award-winning keynote and TEDx speaker. I am a wellness consultant. I'm a business coach, and I'm also a mindfulness facilitator.
The
So
list, the list. I'm for it.
the list. And I too used to have a private practice and actually pivoted out of that about a year ago. Sold my house, my red Mercedes Benz, paid off all my student loans, and moved to Mexico. And I'm in Mexico right now. That is where I am doing my half of this interview. And I wanted to talk about pivots because a lot of times we think when we get into the new life, it's going to be easy. And then you get there and it's like, oh, this new life requires a different version of me that I have not yet worked on. So just me getting to Mexico, like I was still in the bustle and the rushing things. And I was kind of like, the whole point of moving here and moving closer to the beach was so I could have a more relaxed life, but I didn't have a relaxed mind. And so we'll also be talking about the mindset that we have to prepare to do before the pivot so that when we get there, we don't feel like a fish out of water. Sen, can you tell us what were you pivoting from and where did you pivot to?
When I started my career in social work, which has been like over 10 years now, to put some age on me a little bit, um, I remember kind of thinking I'm going to save the world, right? For all the baby social workers out there,
Mm,
that's like the first thing that we think about when we're in school and we're not
yep.
really told otherwise. And so, kind of, my career started in a state organization and then I moved into nonprofits. And ultimately, like, the one thing is like the burnout, the excessive work, the high caseloads, and this just, you got to kind of roll with it, and it's just a part of the job. um and I think that I just couldn't fathom sitting in a life like that for that long.
Mm,
Like, when I start, my first job was with Child Protective Services in Connecticut, and I remember thinking to myself, like, within the first 2 weeks, I was like, I'm not going to be here for more than 2 years.
yeah.
And I basically told myself my intention is by that 2 year mark, I better be on my way out the door doing something different because this is not sustainable.
Mm,
Granted, I thinking back to it now, I would say that I didn't even know why I had that feeling. I just knew that wasn't where I was supposed to be.
right.
And then moving on to nonprofit orgs, and that's feeling a little less crazy, but still crazy in its own way.
Mhm.
You know, there's hierarchy things, all of that. So I feel like I'm a Sagittarius, y'all. I like my freedom.
Right, right, right.
And when I was being told, like, listen, you need to be here from 9 to 5 and sometimes from 9 to 10 and working 10 to 12-hour days and taking work home with you. And I was just like, this isn't a life that I think I could, like, kudos to whoever does this work for 30, 40 years of their life.
Right.
Um, but I don't know if that's sustainable for me.
Mm.
And so as time went on, there was just this thought process of like, I just can't. I feel like the automatic pivot for most social workers is that when you retire, you go into private practice.
Right.
So I think my automatic thought was like, well, eventually I'll get to that point where I'll own my own business. I'm just working up until that point. And
Right.
that point came a lot earlier than I even anticipated.
Yeah.
And when it came, I was a little hesitant because I was like, I mean, I'm still in my early 30s, you know, and I'm still young. And I don't think like I'm expecting to be this 50, 60-year-old woman with my own private practice and the tweed jacket with the sofa and the tell me, you know, about your relationship with your
Glasses.
mom with the glasses and the pen and paper and,
Right, right.
you know, the office. Like the vision I had is like the typical vision.
Mm.
um and I was like, I don't know, but I just couldn't do nonprofit anymore. I couldn't do the 9 to 5. I couldn't do just kind of all of the excessiveness of it and needing to kind of check the boxes
Mm.
for organizations and things like that. It just felt like I wasn't getting to the core of what it was I wanted to do, which was to actually help people.
Mm. Wow.
um you know, and that goes into so many other things in terms of like a colonized system and one that's not made for people who look like us. But
Okay, because we can get into it.
but
We
that's a
can get into
conversation
it.
for another
Another,
day.
that's another
Yes,
conversation. We can get
yes.
into it. Yes. Yeah. You said some keywords that I want to kind of mirror back to you. You said sustainable. That's huge, right?
Mhm.
Because I think it's one thing to exert a lot of energy. It's another thing to be able to sustain that, right? And then part of the conversation is for a lot of people on the other side of a pivot is why do I feel like I need to sustain that anyway? There are other ways to make money, right? So that word really comes up for me. And something else you said was like the typical vision. Sometimes when we're following steps that we think we should follow, it keeps us stuck in a place. But you came to a place where you were kind of like, this typical vision is not my vision.
Mhm.
So what was your, I call it like the awakening moment, the moment where you looked in the mirror and you were like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore. Do you remember where you were, what it felt like, and what was going on during that time?
I feel like what was happening, there was a lot of stuff happening at the particular job I was at prior to me leaving and going into private practice. And it was, some of it was a lot of hierarchy bull. And, you know, some of it was kind of just knowing that like I wasn't happy. And you know, I'm a very energetic person. I believe in energy. And I feel like just the energy was so heavy to be like, I have to leave. Like something's telling me I can't stay here. And it was very much a vibe of like, the longer you stay here, the more likely you're not going to like how you leave.
Mm.
And so, you know, kind of taking, and I think that aha moment was when I realized, oh my God, it's a lot easier to establish a private practice than even I thought, right? We don't get taught, we don't have MBAs. And I wish in social work schools they would actually teach you a little bit about business
Yeah.
because you'd understand why the nonprofit sector is the way that it is, or for profit, or hospitals, or, you know, whatever, even if you're getting involved in corporations, like understanding those business aspects. So it was like, oh, that's how easy it is for me to come up with an LLC name and just establish a business and like go off.
Right.
Like, and when I came to that realization, you know, I was very, like I said, hesitant. And my husband was just like, I mean, listen, what do you got to lose at this point? Like, just go for it.
Right.
And he's like, you're not where you thought you'd be, but that doesn't matter, right? You still get
Mhm.
to try it out. So I think that that was kind of my aha moment of like, I get to make my own schedule and, you know, do my own things.
Right.
And I get to pick and figure out what type of clients I want to be able to service. And how I want to go about servicing them and make it fit for, my community.
Yeah.
So I think that that was kind of the draw, the aha, the awakening of like, if I get the freedom part of it, then absolutely. Granted, there are things that I have now learned in my 4 years that
Right. Right.
it's
Right.
not that simple, y'all. It's not that simple.
Right. Right.
Um, I am making it sound a lot easier than it actually is, but building up clientele and doing all of that. But more or less, the biggest awakening part of it for me was I get to do what I actually want to do, and I get to make that.
Yeah. Powerful, powerful. You said it was easier than you thought. One of my people I follow, his name is Myron Golden, and he says, like, don't assign a level of difficulty to something you haven't tried yet. And for
Mm.
me, that's a bar because we think like it's gonna be hard and I don't know how to do it. And then you see the steps and you're like, oh, there's only 5 of them? Oh,
Oh, I could do this online. That's so simple.
it's all I can do this while I'm at my job. Don't talk about it. Right?
Right.
Like I can just do this on my lunch break. Like, yeah. So here's a little nugget that we're giving to people watching this is don't assign a level of difficulty to something you haven't tried yet. Look at what the steps are going to be before you decide you can't do it. And if you don't know what the steps are and you need help with those steps, that's another conversation. But step one is to generally say, how do I accomplish this first before you
Mhm.
decide that you can't? Um, so in your moment of awakening or in that kind of crossroads moment, you said, I get to have a different reality. Talk to me about that. And I say that because I feel like the generation before us and before that one, you work one job for 30 years, you retire. That's the way how things went. But I feel like us as a generation, we're coming in and being like, hold on, I get to have a different reality. So talk to me about that realization and what that meant for you as you were coming across it.
Being raised by that generation, and kind of that you work a job even if you don't like it, you need to go to work, and too bad, you suck it up and you keep it moving and you make money and you support, you provide. That reality shift was kind of like this foreboding of like, it was two things fighting each other, because there was the one side of me that was like, yes, we're gonna I think it was ultimately, like, if I'm really going down to brass tacks, it was the creativity part of me that just wanted out,
Yeah.
and she wanted that space, and the other half of me that's like the nerdy, we follow the rules aspect of myself is like, no, this is not how things are supposed to go. This
Right.
is not how, this is how they go. And you have to just work a job and be okay with that. And that's stable. You don't know anything about this. And then the creative part of me is like, who cares? Let's go frolic in the woods or something. Like, it was literally just day and night internally. Like, I tell people all the time, like, it's okay if you talk to yourself and you've got kind of two sides to yourself, because sometimes that just happens. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Cynthia is the nerdy part. Sin is the one that's like, let's go frolic in the woods, run through some wildflowers, and then maybe we'll go run a business real quick. Like,
Okay.
it's
That's for fun.
so right. And they keep each other in check, every once in a while. But in that moment, it was really hard to transition because I was doubting myself
Mm.
so significantly in that reality. I was like, no, maybe I should just go back to, I could take back my resignation, right? I can go back, and
Mm.
very much questioning whether or not the step I took was actually the step I should have taken.
Right.
And should is such a bad word, because it tells us, like, you should be at this point in your life in your 30s, and you should be this and you should be that. And that's not good. And so I feel like that was kind of the internal battle that I was having, just to have that reality and that shift.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you're correct. It was definitely a lot to kind of process through.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the past 4 years, I think I would like occasionally be like, is this real? Like, do I really have a business?
Business owner? What the hell?
Right. Like,
Something that came up. I'm taking notes. So when you see me looking down, it's because
mhm.
I am a class A nerd and this is the inside of my brain and this is how I have to process things. But this concept of suffering, right? And just managing through your suffering. that we learned, a lot of us learned, Black, Brown, Caribbean, immigrant, right? You throw all those stories in there.
Mm-hmm.
The acceptance of suffering almost leads to a requirement of suffering. If you're not suffering, you're not doing something right in life. So
Right.
like suffering through jobs or suffering through relationships and not just being the way things are, kind of led folks to believe like if it does feel good and joyful and easy,
It's too
maybe I
good to be
shouldn't be
true.
doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I shouldn't do it. And that comes up too. Part of the battle is, am I supposed to be having fun in my career? Like, is this supposed to be feeling joy? Am I supposed to have free time? So even those kind of cultural ancestral lessons that we learn impact our ability to shift and change, because we know a lot of people who didn't shift and change because they were kind of like, this is just the way things are,
Right.
and sitting right in that. Um, and feeling like what should I be doing according to that typical vision?
Right.
Oh, this is good. Talk about the doubt. Talk about that kind of like, I think of like a line and you like jumping back and forth between like, talk about that process that you went through.
I don't like that process. I don't like it.
Like,
Why are you therapizing me right now? I think that the doubt, it never goes away.
yeah,
If
yeah.
anything, it might get a little more quiet. Um, but I do think that there was a quote recently that I heard about like, you know, you sometimes doubt has to come first before we actually take the leap to
Mm-hmm.
doing something else.
Yeah.
And so that had kind of stuck with me, that resonated, and that was just recently I came to that. But it was, a lot of it was like, you're too young, right? A lot of ageism stuff, you're too young to be doing this. Do you really actually know everything? um do you have all your ducks in a row? Do you, and the realization here is that nothing is ever done alone, right? You are always going to have support. And so, me thinking I'm this baby social worker, which I'm not. I had all this experience, but the truth was is that I was like, maybe I don't have all the lessons yet, or I should go and like take classes and get certifications and all of these different modalities,
Yeah.
and just all the things of trying to put more things on my plate. Like, I haven't done enough, so I have to push myself to do more, because this has to be, I have to be perfect to be able to go into this phase of my life.
Woo!
And the truth is that no one is perfect going
Right.
into anything. Like 9 times out of 10, like we talk about, you walk into a room like you're a mediocre white man. And it's because most of the time the mediocre white man has no clue what the hell he's talking about.
Nope.
But he walks in there like he owns the place and people actually pay attention.
Okay.
Right. So we have all this knowledge, and Jalan, you talk about this a lot too, where you're like, there's these women, plenty of women, especially BIPOC women, who
Mm-hmm.
come into a room with tons of letters behind their name, all this experience,
Mm-hmm.
and they still doubt themselves or still need to kind of add on to that. And it's like, but we
Yeah.
just kind of do. So I feel like with the doubt, what was happening is like, I'm just becoming friends with it at this point. It's just being
Okay.
like, hey, what's up, you're back. That means there's something that needs to happen. Now my creativity has to get better. I think that was kind of the place that I've been going with my doubt, because it's just there. It's kind of like the little guy on your shoulder.
Right. Adding doubt to the team. Come
Hmm.
on in on the staff meeting, doubt.
Right.
Can't sit at the head of the table, but go on and sit next to fear because y'all gonna be here anyway.
Right. You guys are besties. Y'all clicky about it, and it's fine. You
Right.
sit by the water pump and y'all talk and figure out how to mess up the whole office. But
Right.
I think it's also like welcoming it sometimes, because it's like,
Mhm.
it happens for a reason. That's our natural response, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Because we're not always confident in everything that we do.
Yeah. Woo! You just dropped bars and gems, all in that what you just said. This idea of maybe I don't know enough, right? I do want to talk about some of the elitism that happens in the in the social work field, and everyone's an expert in the social work field because they read a bunch of books, not because they're part of the community that they work in. Hello.
Mm.
Um, But okay. But just that concept of feeling like you don't know enough and that imposter syndrome that comes up, right? Even with the years of experience and the letters and the credentials and the really good ass school that you went to, all of those things, and still coming into spaces and being like, well, maybe I need to do 10 more things before I can do the next thing to almost prove that I'm worthy or prove that I'm ready for that. And that's a real conversation when we talk about pivot and change, because a lot of people are waiting to feel adequate before they change.
Mm-hmm.
But you gotta change to feel adequate. Somebody write that down. Somebody write it
Write
down.
it down. Write it down. I'm
That was
typing
a
out real quick.
bar. That was a bar. It's like, what comes first? What comes first is the change, right? And
Right.
then how you feel about yourself shifts. Um, but that's really, really important of feeling too young and feeling like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. How did you push through that? Tell us about, if you can give us steps or mindset or skills. How did you get through the feelings of imposter syndrome and get to a place where you can welcome doubt and fear as a part of your process?
Oh, step one would be just being comfortable with who you are. And I
Mm-hmm.
think knowing your process, right? And understanding that as humans, we don't stop evolving. Who
Mm-hmm.
you were last month is not who you are 30 days.
Right,
It's
right.
every year you're a different person. You're either shedding a new skin or, you're adding something or adding realizations or self awareness to yourself. And I think having that kind of be the mindset that brings, because a lot of people I hear with wanting to do, oh, I can be authentically me. And it's like, but then who are you?
Mm.
Right. So being
Hello.
able to step into yourself first, right?
Mm.
And I think in the beginning of starting my business, I most definitely didn't allow myself to do that. And then when I started doing that, I was like, well, I know who I am. I know what I bring to the table. I know
Right.
who I bring to the table when I'm in front of clients or meeting with friends, or, this is just kind of who I am. And trying to change myself or be any different is so uncomfortable.
Full-time
Just
job. It's like
right.
a
It's a
role.
full-time job to be like, we talk about code switching, which is completely different, but like, just kind of being able to be who you are and being comfortable with like where you are in your process. So I feel like that was like step one in kind of getting through that. I think, what was the question? I had a brain
You
fart.
know, I don't remember what I asked. Just a secret for anyone watching this. As therapists, we don't know what we said because everything is off the
My
top of
train of thought went and it left the station. That's what
don't
happened.
know. That we just be out here.
You heard I had a really good talk right up to, and then they left the
No, that
station.
was
I don't know
good.
where it went.
You on it.
Uh,
Good. We're always
you asked
changing
me
and
for
evolving.
steps. You asked
That,
me for steps.
yeah, step one. What was
And I
step
said step
one?
one, and that was step one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would. It's really hard because everybody's process is so different too.
Right. Right.
Um, and it's more about what you're comfortable, And I think you said it best about people are wait for that change, but
Yeah.
you have to kind of be willing to change in it. And I feel like I want to go back to that a little bit because we in our profession, in this profession specifically with social work, I can't speak for every other profession, but I also think it's the way that you're raised, is that you're kind of taught to be humble, and you're taught to not want to be bigger and better than who you are now. um you know in the social work field, it's a common conversation of like, you're not meant to make all this money. You already knew what you were getting yourself into by the time you got to this. So the fact that you expect to have a successful business and to, is should be beneath you in a sense. And so you're kind of taught not to feel comfortable. It's almost cringe to
Mm-hmm.
want to be more and to do more.
Right.
um and that's a change, that's a shift, it's a mindset shift,
Mm-hmm.
to be comfortable putting yourself out there. Be comfortable sitting with that and being like, oh my God, I'm on a podcast, I'm talking to somebody, we're having a conversation. Like, this is gonna be out there somewhere. And that's weird, but at the same time, that's cool. But at the same time, that's great. Like there's all these different emotions that are happening. And it's like, I have to be comfortable with each and every one of them. Duality, triality, whatever you want to call it is a thing, right? You can feel multitudes of things at once. And so I think the biggest step for me would be that authenticity piece is like, find what's important to you, get to know yourself, because that's how your business, that's how your pivot becomes what it is.
Yeah.
And it's catered to you. The common conversation of like, well, and I've had this conversation with Jelanya. I'm gonna call myself out before she called me out, because I can't tell you how many times I've said to her, well, everybody else is doing it. Why would I talk about it? Like everybody's talking about it already. And she's like, but are they you though?
Mm.
But are they you?
What are
And
they?
it's right. And exactly like that. That's how she said it to me.
Say it.
And I had to take a step back, and it's what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
But that's you knowing yourself, right? So yes, somebody else is talking about emotional intelligence somewhere else, and they are able to do it in a very sufficient way. But what you bring to the table, the energy that you bring to something, puts more energy and life into that for someone else, right? It's not what that person is doing may not be for somebody, but what you're doing may be for somebody. So it's kind of the mindset shift is the second step, I would say.
Mm. That one. Okay. I'm taking notes, y'all, because she's spitting bars. No, that's really, really important. You said something also. You said knowing your process. And knowing your process is a part of knowing who you are. So, for example, I know that my brain is very active between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. By 1:30, I'm like, I don't want to see words. I don't want to think. That ain't the way it goes. So knowing how you work, when you work, how you move successfully, are you someone who needs to be organized? Those are really, really important parts of your pivot, because what I see people do is they're like, okay, when I pivot, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week and I'm going to wake up at 8 a.m. and if you're not doing that now, and that is something that's difficult for you because it's not in your process, it's not in your rhythm, then expecting yourself to do that when you get there is a sure way to sabotage. So, like you said, knowing your process and knowing yourself is step one, because it's almost like you know what you need first. And I know I'm talking to people who don't know what they need. So, almost like a pre-step one is you really got to figure out what you need, who you are in this chapter in your life. And that takes a certain level of introspection that we'll talk about in some other episodes, but it's just really important, like you were saying, to know who you are, because sometimes we don't, it's like a resume. Sometimes we don't update our resume. So I'll ask somebody what their favorite food is, and they'll talk about a favorite food from when they're like 9 years old. And it's like, do you still like that? Or have you not checked in with yourself to see what you like? So a part of this is like knowing you, knowing your process, knowing what works, knowing what doesn't. Um, and knowing that the mindset shift is really, really important too, because
Right.
yeah, that humble, we talked about humble when we worked together, and just shifting that concept of, I think the definition of humble is like thinking lesser of yourself, or making yourself small. Part of what it's going to take to shift is to be able to express who you are and what you do, like we did in the beginning of this, that introducing ourselves as a title. I'm not gonna come on here and be like, hi, I'm just Shalon. No, 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 no. I'm gonna tell y'all who I am. And that's a part of the process, because people have to know who you are and what your values are in order for you to be successful in your next chapter.
Mm-hmm. I can't stand writing bios about myself, and
Mm.
had to get better at that. What's your bio? Tell us about yourself. I mean, I remember the first time I told you I went to NYU, and you were like, "Hold up, time out.
I'm sorry.
You went to NYU?" And I
I'm
was like,
sorry.
"Yeah, that's where I got my master's." And you're like,
The
"Why are you not
masters.
throwing this out everywhere? Like, why
Okay.
are you not telling the world?" And I'm like, "I mean, it's just NYU." And you're like,
Mm-mm.
no, I'm pretty sure it's not just
It's not.
NYU.
It's not. Literally, I think we were hiking together, and I think I
Yeah.
like mid walk, and I was like, I'm sorry.
The
What?
one time I managed to stop you in your tracks was when
Right. Right. Because I was like, I'm sorry. And this is a piece of it too of when we hide those parts of ourselves or feel like it's bragging to talk highly of yourself. It's the truth. Hello.
Right. I'm just stating facts. I'm not, you know, and I think it's also the demeanor of how you say it. Like, my name is Cynthia. I have my own private practice. I'm not, I have my own private practice and present yourself, right? These are things that are part of you. And so and definitely working with you has been something that I've learned to become a lot more comfortable with, especially when you're like, brag about it, talk about it.
Let the people know. Let the people know because our accomplishments are leverage. And I was reading something. No, I wasn't reading something. Let me not even lie to you. I was watching Myron Golden, and one of the things he says is how much more difficult it is to teach educated people about business because we haven't learned to leverage our education. So our idea of success is to go get more education, but we haven't learned how to leverage everything we have so far. And that's a piece of it too. You speaking about yourself is your leverage. Where you went to school is your leverage. Your degrees and certifications, that is your leverage. And that's what Connor, the mediocre white man, is using that we are not. He's using leverage. And we're like, maybe I should go get another certification, even though your title is falling off the paper.
Right. It don't fit no more.
It don't even fit.
You have the whole alphabet. It don't fit no more.
Okay, you can transcribe it into different languages. It's so long, and yet the mindset right around the imposter syndrome and feeling like no, I got to be humble. I can't, especially as women of color. We got to break some of that in order to be able to get into the next level of what it is that we are working on. Oh, this is so good. I'm so excited. Talk to us a little bit about when we work together and some of the themes that came up that are helpful for you now in some of the shifting that you're doing, because pivoting is a constant process, the same way evolution is. So where I was in my business last year is not where I am in my business. The pivot is like ongoing process. So talk about some things that we talked about working together that helped you kind of be able to continue within your shift and your pivot.
First of all, she like read me to filth on a lot of things. But a big part of the process, I think, was me getting deeper into understanding some of my relationship with business in general, like my idea of where I needed to be versus where I actually was and what did I actually want to do. I think I came into private practice expecting to just see clients day in and day out. First of all, nobody tells you that if you want to make like a good amount of money, a good salary,
livable wage,
a livable wage, you need to be seeing quite a few people a day, and it made me understand how some of these private practice therapists that I see that are like working 7 days a week, still seeing clients every single day, to actually make that livable wage. And it was like, but I don't want this heavy caseload. I want to be able to give attention to the people that I'm meeting with. And I don't want to be seeing 60 people in a week. That's not doable.
Yeah.
And with that came some challenges of kind of understanding, okay, well, then if that's the case, then you're not making as significant amount of money as you maybe were making when you were working with a nonprofit or working with a state agency. And so I think that there was needing to kind of get in touch with like, what did I actually want out of my business? Because it was starting to become, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Now, keep in mind during COVID, to give the caveat, if no one has ever known a social worker or had one in their life, but if you have, you will know that every single social worker has questioned through COVID whether or not they wanted to continue with this field.
Yes.
Because it became extremely inundated with the realization that people were sitting still and now realizing they needed to work through their depression, anxiety, trauma, the works, right? And so it was an influx of this attention to mental health that we didn't even have prior. Right. And so I think that there was that realization of like, it's not sustainable to hold that for people. As much as we enjoy helping people and as much as it is lovely to watch somebody go through that evolution and process,
Yeah.
It's beautiful, but it's also not sustainable for us. And so I'm like, do I really want to continue to do this for the rest of my business? And what do I actually want intuitive healing to become? And I feel like that was the conversation that you helped me answer quite a bit of when I was working with you was, what do I actually want? Like, am I being creative, or am I just, again, I think I went back to that. This is what I should be doing in a private practice.
Yes. The default is
Right, the default. I
Mhm.
regressed and went back
Yep.
versus like actually letting my creativity be a thing. And want, I do love to do speaking engagements. I actually enjoy teaching, and I feel like that was kind of where I came back to. And but then there was this conversation with myself of like, well, the money has to come from doing therapy.
Mm,
And recently, you and I had this conversation of like, sometimes it doesn't necessarily matter. Not to say that it doesn't matter in the sense of like, don't go crazy, but like it, the stream doesn't have to always be just therapy. You could
correct.
still be doing a speaking engagement here, or doing voice acting here, or you could be doing a multitude of things. It doesn't have to be that you're just one person. And I think that's what it was. Is like it was very black and white and not very gray.
Yeah.
And when I was working with you, it became that gray of like, oh, I could somehow make a lot of this intermingle, make it my own, and make it me.
Mm,
So that I could do. Because I will tell you right now, by the 25-year mark of social work, my intention is to retire from social work. I
yes.
don't know what I would be doing. If I have kids, I will find something else to do.
Mm.
If anybody follows the dope black social worker on Instagram, she talked about she gonna retire, and she was like, if I have to go and own a car wash or do whatever, like whatever makes her happy and brings her joy. And I felt that. I resonated that with that so much because and so I'm like, maybe I'll just go full-time voice acting by that point if I'm not already out of the field by then.
Love that. Or maybe,
But and that's also another thing I like had to get used to learning again. And I think I learned that with you as well, was just this like, just be a nerd and just want to learn things like.
yeah,
And I think it's harder and more of a challenge because it's not something I'm naturally good at. I'm naturally good at being a social worker,
got it.
versus voice acting. It's like I actually have to learn how to, like, you would think this is so easy, just having a conversation
Right.
and interchanging my voice, but this is like my natural me, and in voice acting, that's not the case. So I
So,
just ultimately learned a lot within myself and kind of what I wanted to do within my business working with you. And like I still have your affirmations that you gave me on the wall, like they're always in front of me, and telling myself like I'm worthy of success and I could do this. Like I don't have to be cringe about the fact that I'm putting myself out there, because I think that that's like a very big one that a lot of people struggle with, is that discomfort of being seen.
yeah.
That would be like step 3, be okay with being seen.
Step, be okay with being seen. Yeah, that's huge. And thank you for sharing that too. Of the sometimes we get back to the default of the shoulds. Even
Hmm.
after we pivot, right? We get back to default. And it's so important to have those things that shake us up and say, remember the creative version of you? Remember the childlike version of you who loved to try new things and was creative and was exploratory and liked adventures? Like that is a human part of us too. And I think when we get into that traditional box, or we following the steps we should follow, we lose the human part of us.
Hmm.
And it's so important when you get back into that. And I love how you say too, like a voice acting doesn't come naturally, right? It's not something I can just wake. I actually got to learn and fail and learn it
Right. I
again.
actually have to learn how to use my voice, which I thought I was
Ooh,
doing it all the time. And
right, right,
it's, you're learning. I learn about like what I actually sound like. And I
right.
actually come off very sarcastic for the most part, which I think is, I'm surprised by that, but whatever.
I think you come off as genuine, and I just love how you challenge people, but in a way that is very caring and loving. Like I feel like I challenge people. I'd be like, let me get my
She's
eyeball in the
she's
camera.
not lying, y'all. She really does be looking
Make
at
sure
me
you
like
see
that
my
sometimes.
eyeballs.
I'll be texting her and that's how I feel it through the phone. I feel it. I'd be like, oh my God, don't look at me like that. Stop that. Like,
Eyeballs away. Um, no, but this conversation is really, really important. So tell anybody who's watching this how they can find you, what kind of projects you're interested in working on. What is it that you want people to know about you? Because we also want you to make some money from this as well. So if anybody's watching, what do you need them to know about you?
you can find me at Intuitive Healing Counseling LLC. I have an Instagram, so you can feel free to follow. And I have a LinkedIn. You can also find me on LinkedIn as either Cynthia Melendez or Intuitive Healing Counseling LLC has its own LinkedIn. Currently, the work that I'm doing is just kind of speaking to small groups about like emotional intelligence and feeling emotions, working through emotions, coping skills for the community, which I think are super important. I feel like if people can learn these skills within the community, that, you know, my job is to put myself out of a job. I feel like that's like the biggest thing. And I tell everybody that. So if we could kind of give it to people on a larger scale and have it accessible, that's kind of my hope. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now with the current projects. If anybody feels the need to sign up, I have a current speaking engagement coming up next week on September 25th.
Okay.
It's called A Seat at the Table. It'll be talking about emotional intelligence, but it is a community conversation. So you get to participate if you would like to, or just listen. And so if anybody would like to attend, the tickets are pay what you can, or you can pay the full price of $30 or pay as little as $5. So
I love that. Well, thank you for chatting with me. And this is
thanks
how
for
I want
having
this to
me.
feel. I want this to feel like a conversation, a good time, but also too, I know there are women who are either stuck or know they're ready to move and need to have more conversations about what does it look like internally for me to start this process. So you
Mm-hmm.
gave us 3 steps, be comfortable. And this is why I write stuff down because I would never remember. Step 1, be comfortable with who you are, know who you are. Step 2 was to work on that mindset. And step 3 was work on being okay with being visible. Because
Mm-hmm.
most times when you're elevating into something else, being visible is going to be a part of that. Because most likely you will be speaking to a new audience in whatever you do, and those people will need to see you so they know about you. Um,
Right.
Anything else you want to share? Anything else that you want to tell people who are in before, during, or after their pivot?
If you're in the process of before, just take the leap. Just do it.
Let's do it.
Stop thinking about it. Just do it. It'll turn out better than you thought it would be. Stop overthinking it. Just do it. If you're currently going through the pivot, how y'all doing? Need a shoulder?
Because
I
I'm in
got you.
one right now. Amen.
Right. I'm right here for you. I'm right here. I feel it. I feel it. If
Hold
it's
on.
after the pivot, if you're after that pivot, help, help a sister. I'm putting out my hand. Let's go.
Right. Come
I'm
back
ready.
and get me.
Come back and get me. You left
Yes.
me. But yeah, that would be the messages I would give. But for those that are already have gone through the pivot, like, I have to clap for you because it's a lot. It's not for the weak. I give you that.
Those, for those who are on the other side of the pivot, go sit down and process. Because
Right. Enjoy it.
you ain't got no
Please.
edges. Chances are
Right.
your heartburn acting up. Chances are because the pivots
Right.
you up.
Right. It'll snatch your edges.
It's
That's what
gonna
it'll do.
snatch you up in a good way.
Right. In a good
All
way.
right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. So this will be up on YouTube and it will be on some other platforms as well. Please subscribe and we will be back in a couple of weeks to talk with more people and also to talk more about pivoting, what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, all the good, bad, and the ugly. Again, my name is Jalan Agnew and welcome to the Power of the Pivot.